He came home early, and what he saw broke his heart forever. Dominic remained in the hallway long after the front doors closed behind Vivian. His arms tightened protectively around Sophie, who clung to him as if she were afraid he might vanish too. The faint hitch in her breathing betrayed her struggle to hold back sobs. He carried her to the wide staircase, the same staircase that once echoed with her laughter when she slid down the banister under his amused watch. Setting her gently on the step beside him, Dominic tilted her chin up. Her pale blue eyes, usually bright with mischief, looked clouded and dim. "Did she hurt you often?" His voice cracked despite his effort to sound calm. Sophie hesitated. Her tiny fingers twisted in the fabric of his suit jacket. Finally, in a voice softer than a whisper, she said, "Sometimes when you weren't here." The word stabbed through Dominic's chest. He had built skyscrapers, secured billion-dollar mergers, and conquered markets across continents, but none of it mattered now. He had failed in the one role that defined him above all, being Sophie's protector. Tears burned his eyes, but he forced them back. He needed to be strong for her. "I am so sorry," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "I should have seen it. I should have been here. But I promise you this, Sophie, you will never feel that kind of pain again. Not while I'm alive." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile as she leaned against him. That small gesture of trust both comforted and condemned him. It reminded him how much she still needed him and how blind he had been. For the rest of that day, Dominic never left Sophie's side. He stayed with her while she ate dinner, read her favorite story twice at bedtime, and lingered in her room long after she fell asleep. He sat by her bed in the glow of a night light shaped like a star, his heart aching at the thought of how many nights she might have cried alone. When he finally rose and walked through the darkened halls of Ravinska estate, guilt followed him like a shadow. In the days that followed, Dominic canceled his meetings and postponed contracts. Executives at Leighton Global Holdings were surprised. Dominic never neglected business. Yet he no longer cared about numbers or deadlines. His only priority was Sophie. He noticed the little things first. How she flinched at sudden noises. How she moved slowly, apologizing for taking up space. How laughter seemed to catch in her throat instead of spilling out freely as it once had. At breakfast one morning, while he buttered toast and she pushed cereal around her bowl, Sophie spoke. "Daddy." He looked up immediately, careful not to rush her. "Yes, sweetheart." Her eyes darted to the table. "Sometimes she didn't give me dinner. She said I didn't deserve it if I was clumsy." Dominic's hand froze around the knife. His chest tightened with fury, but he forced his tone to remain calm. "And you didn't tell me?" Sophie shook her head. "I thought maybe you wouldn't believe me. Or maybe you'd be mad at me for making trouble." The weight of her words crushed him. He leaned across the table, taking her small hand in his. "Listen to me, Sophie. Nothing you say will ever make me stop believing you. And you could never make me stop loving you. Do you understand?" She nodded hesitantly, tears welling in her eyes. That night, long after she had gone to bed, Dominic sat alone in his study. The glow of the city skyline shimmered beyond the tall windows, but he hardly saw it. For the first time in years, he wept. Not the controlled, silent tears of frustration he allowed himself after a lost deal, but deep, aching sobs of a man who realized how badly he had failed the one person who mattered most. By dawn, one truth had crystallized. He could no longer balance Sophie against his empire. She deserved more than occasional attention between meetings. She deserved his presence, his love, his every effort. The following week, Dominic informed the board of Leighton Global Holdings that he would be stepping back temporarily. Shock rippled through the company. Rumors flew in newspapers about health issues, scandals, and hostile takeovers. Dominic ignored them all. Every morning, he ate breakfast with Sophie. Every afternoon, he accompanied her to therapy sessions where she practiced strengthening her legs. Every evening, he read to her, sometimes nodding off mid-chapter only for Sophie to giggle and nudge him awake. The contrast between this life and his old one struck him deeply. In the boardroom, victories were measured in percentages and profit margins. At home, triumph was watching Sophie's lips curl into a shy smile or hearing her laugh bubble out when she beat him at a board game. One night, Sophie showed him a drawing she had made. It was of a stick figure man holding hands with a smaller figure, both standing under a sun with rays like golden spokes. "That's us," she said proudly. Dominic's throat tightened. He pinned the drawing above his desk in his study, knowing no business accolade would ever mean as much. Healing was slow, uneven, and often painful. Sophie had nightmares that jolted her awake. She struggled during physical therapy, her legs trembling as she tried to take even the smallest steps. At times, she wanted to give up, but Dominic was always there. He knelt beside her at every session, whispering encouragement. He held her hand when she cried, telling her that courage wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up each time she did. Friends and kind neighbors began to visit, offering gentle support. They brought flowers, books, and patient smiles. Sophie, once shy and withdrawn, gradually began to trust them. The turning point came one afternoon when she showed Dominic a new painting. This one burst with color, bright blues, warm yellows, and vivid greens. It showed a girl standing tall beside her father, both smiling beneath a rainbow. When Dominic asked what it meant, Sophie answered simply, "It's how I feel now." He kissed her forehead, his heart swelling with relief. Slowly but surely, she was blooming again. "Would you like me to continue straight through the next chapter's 5 epilogue, now in one big flowing section, or would you like me to pause here so you can review the style and pacing?" Peace had begun to settle over Ravinska estate when the past came knocking again. It was a Saturday afternoon. Dominic and Sophie were in the garden, working together to plant lavender along the stone pathway. Sophie's laughter rang out as Dominic teased her about planting the flowers upside down. The air was sweet with the promise of spring. Then the wrought iron gates clanged open. A sleek black car rolled up the drive, its engine purring like a predator. Dominic's jaw tightened as Vivian stepped out, clad in a designer coat, sunglasses perched on her head as though she were arriving at a fashion show. Sophie's hand immediately slipped into his. Her little body pressed against his side, trembling. Vivian's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dominic." "Sophie." "My, how you've both been keeping busy." Dominic's voice was iron. "What do you want?" She removed her sunglasses with a flourish. "I've had time to reflect. I overreacted, perhaps, but Sophie is still my daughter. I came to see her." Sophie buried her face against Dominic's arm, refusing to look at her. Dominic stood tall. "You lost the right to call yourself her mother the moment you raise your hand against her. She doesn't need your apologies or your present." Vivian's smile faltered. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed her expression. "You can't keep her from me forever. Blood is blood. Love," Dominic said coldly, "is what makes a parent, and you've proven you have none for her." The guards Dominic had stationed at the estate moved forward. Vivian's composure cracked into fury. She hissed, "You'll regret this," before being escorted back to her car. When the gates closed again, Sophie whispered, "Daddy, she can't come back, right?" Dominic knelt, holding her shoulders gently. "No, my angel. Not ever. You're safe now." After Vivian's failed attempt, Dominic tightened security and reassured Sophie daily that she was safe. But more importantly, he poured himself into nurturing her spirit. Each week, Sophie grew stronger. She mastered short walks across the therapy room, her legs wobbling but her determination unshaken. Dominic cheered louder than anyone, tears brimming each time she took a new step. One evening, she surprised him by racing, half running, half stumbling, down the hallway to greet him after a meeting. Her arms wrapped around his waist with joyous strength. "You see, Daddy, I can do it," she exclaimed. He scooped her up, spinning her gently. "You could do anything, Sophie. Anything." As weeks turned into months, her laughter filled the estate again. She painted more, sang softly while reading books, and even asked to visit the seaside where she had once been afraid to walk the sandy shore. Dominic carried her at first, but by the end of the day, she was walking beside him, holding his hand. Dominic's world had shifted. Business, once his obsession, became a tool for something greater. With Sophie's blessing, he announced the creation of the Sophie Leighton Foundation, dedicated to protecting children from abuse and supporting families in crisis. At the press conference, cameras flashed as Dominic spoke. Sophie stood beside him, her small hand clasped in his, her smile timid but proud. "This foundation," Dominic declared, "is built on a truth I learned too late, that no child should ever suffer in silence. My daughter reminded me that success is meaningless if you cannot keep your loved ones safe. From this day on, my life's work is to ensure others never endure what she did." The applause thundered. Sophie looked up at him, her eyes shining. "You did this for me?" she whispered. He knelt to her level, ignoring the cameras. "For you, Sophie. Always." Seasons passed, and Ravinska Estate transformed from a place of echoes into a home alive with warmth. Sophie invited friends from school to visit. Her laughter rang out in the halls as she played hide-and-seek. Dominic, once a man consumed by wealth, learned to cherish small, ordinary joys. Tea parties with Sophie's dolls, walks in the park, even burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings when Sophie insisted on helping in the kitchen. One spring afternoon, as they picnicked beneath a blooming cherry tree, Sophie rested her head on his shoulder. "You're the best daddy in the whole world," she murmured. Dominic's throat tightened. He kissed her hair, whispering back, "And you're my whole world, Sophie." Years later, the story of Dominic and Sophie Leighton became more than personal. It became a symbol. The Sophie Leighton Foundation grew, touching thousands of lives. Sophie herself blossomed into a confident young woman, carrying grace and resilience born from pain but strengthened by love. She painted murals in children's hospitals, her art bursting with hope. And Dominic? He aged with peace in his heart. The guilt of his failure never vanished entirely, but it transformed into purpose. He was no longer just the titan of an empire. He was the father who chose love above all else. At a gala celebrating the Foundation's 10th anniversary, Sophie stood on stage, her voice clear as she addressed the crowd. "I am proof that even in the darkest shadows, love can bring light. My father gave me that light when I needed it most. And together, we want to give that light to every child who needs it." Dominic, sitting in the front row, felt tears spill freely down his cheeks. He no longer hid them, for he knew that though wealth had once defined him, it was love, unyielding, imperfect, but fierce, that had saved them both. And in that truth, he finally found peace. Subscribe.